And I wanted to ask you about the things at St. Francis. It was interesting and such a way to problem solve, moving from Division One down to Division Three. And then I think there were a lot of people then that just departed. How are things, in your estimation, as to the move at St. Francis to D3 from D1?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I've actually, I've thought a lot about that. I've talked to a lot of people about that. When they announced that they were moving from D1 to D3, I was in like the final interview process with UPJ, and I was really excited, hoping that I was going to get the UPJ job. But at the same time, I will always love and support St. Francis. I cried, like bawled my eyes out when they told me. When they told me, because I didn't think that's what the meeting was about. Our men's basketball team with Rob Krimmel had just made the NC2A tournament, and we were like more hyped than anything. Rob Krimmel, former swimmer, you probably know this, but his dad was the head coach at Penn State men's and women's swimming for years, and that's really cool to have a head basketball coach whose dad was a really awesome collegiate coach. And so we got the announcement. It was really sad. And, we only had a women's team up there. So Phil and I really just wanted to be there for our swimmers and make sure, they were okay. And at first it didn't seem, I don't know, you can say positive or negative things about it. I don't know how you handle a situation like that. I don't know if anybody can pull that off and do it well, quote unquote. I don't know if there's a playbook for it. But, it was a sad day in Whoville for everybody. And we just did our best to keep the swimmers at St. Francis. I didn't take anyone with me to UPJ because I would never do that. I wouldn't do that to SFU. I wouldn't do that to Phil. And there were some swimmers where we just sat down and I said, listen, I'm going to talk to you like I'm your dad. You're going to get a physician's assistant degree from St. Francis. That's why you're here. That's fantastic. You're going to help a lot of people and make a lot of money. Nobody's necessarily going to the Olympics. As much as I'd love to have you go to the Olympics, nobody's probably going to the Olympics here. You need to stay here and get your degree. And so that was a good conversation to have. There were some swimmers that left, but I feel like a lot of quality swimmers stayed at St. Francis. And Phil Hurley is a recruiting machine. So he's going to build that team really quick. And he gets to coach guys too. They're going to have a men's and a women's team at St. Francis. Makes me nervous recruiting against Coach Phil. So I think they're going to be fine. And I don't really have any skin in the game anymore being at UPJ. But I honestly think after it all settled and got digested, you know what? It's probably the right move for them. D3 is really fast. SFU is a prestigious, expensive school. And I think it's going to be a good fit. And I think when the dust really settles in 2 or 3 years, I don't think anyone's going to know any different. Right now, it's probably a little tumultuous, but I hope that's settled down. But I think they're going to make it. I think they're going to be fine. I look forward to doing a dual meet with SFU in the near future, too.
Now, you're a D2 school, so do you have some scholarship monies? Are you going to build into that? What's the status there?
We do have money on the guys and girls side. We don't have a ton of money. In-state UPJ costs about $26,000 to go there a year. If you have really good grades, you're going to get $4,000 to $5,000 academic money. So that drops it down to $21,000 to $22,000. We do have some athletic money, just, not a ton. At first, I was kind of saving that athletic money for people who would score points at PSACs. I have a little mathematical equation that I didn't make up. I begged, borrowed, and stole it from every other good coach I know. But take the total amount of points it takes to win conference, divide it into your scholarships, and that's how much, money per point you can give out. My plans and thoughts coming in have changed rapidly and evolved as the landscapes evolved in front of me, being a first-time head coach. So, we are giving out scholarship money right now, especially the first year, to help grow the team. And so, if you get $1,000 or $2,000 of scholarship, that brings you down to about $20,000 a year for a degree that says the University of Pittsburgh. There's no Johnstown on the degree. And I sort of feel bad saying that because, hey, University of Pittsburgh, Johnstown's a great degree. Johnstown doesn't show up on there. You got your degree from the University of Pittsburgh, and you have an opportunity to swim when last time I checked, Pitt, Maine, and Oakland, you probably got to have trials cuts or approaching to get on the team, which is how big dog D1 teams do it. And that's great. For us, it's wide open. It's probably a little more than half the cost, probably 60% of the cost as compared to Pitt, Maine. And you're going to have an opportunity to swim. And if you love swimming as much as I do, like, come on in. It's going to be a great time, and we're going to have a great coach-athlete relationship. Most important part of what we do is the coach-athlete relationship. I've got to know my swimmers, and they've got to know me so we can trust each other. And so, we can help each other the best we can. I tell my swimmers, it's not so important what I see you doing in the water. It's really more important what you feel and how you communicate that to me. And then I match it up with what I see, and we put the plan together to biomechanically break down and rebuild your stroke to be best it can be. So yeah, it's cool. We do have a little scholarship money, and I'm using more of it than I thought. So, but that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Yeah. It's nice to have that. It really is. So yeah.
Will the student athletes go there for a year or two and then springboard elsewhere? There's this whole transfer portal, or do you think
not.
Ever, or you stay there for 4 years or even a 50, or your red shirt and such, so do you see that transition? You haven't approached any of that, but that's bound to happen, I imagine.
No, that's a really good thought, because you do think about that in this day and age. The landscape in the last couple of years has totally changed, and I'll be a cranky, grumpy old man and say I don't like it like at all, but I understand it too, and it is what it is. Everything's so instant today. I feel like one of the biggest challenges for young adults and children, and my two children, is to be here now and to be present in the moment. And when you've got computers and phones and everything, you're getting pulled in all these different directions. So I just encourage people to take a deep breath and be here now. And with my recruits, with their families, I really like talking to their moms and dads in person too. And, if you love UPJ, I want you to come here. But I tell them it's the biggest decision of your life up until this point in your life is to choose where you're going to go to college. So go with what your heart tells you to do. As much as I want all these awesome people to come here, they've got to love it, because I want people to stay 4 years. I don't ever want to have one person that transfers or leaves. And part of that is the recruiting process to make sure they love it. I'm not trying to convince them to come here. I can do a very honest and organic, I don't even want to call it a sales job, because it's straight from the bottom of my heart, because I love UPJ that much. I can talk to them about all this, but if they're not into it, you got to go somewhere where you're into, or where you get the best deal too. I don't think you beat the University of Pittsburgh degree. I think that's absolutely worth it, but it's really what I tell the recruits. It's a lot more important what you think than what I think about it. So no, I don't transfers would break my heart. I know it's part of the deal and part of the business, but I'll do everything within reason to have people stay within reason. You got to think of the greater good and the team and everything. But the whole goal is, and I'm sure you totally get this too, bring in swimmers that love it and want to stay and want to get a great education and a great degree and be a part of something that's going to be really fun. I'm a really positive, high energy coach. I don't get mad at my swimmers. If I'm yelling, it's super positive, let's go, so that's how I roll. And, if something's not going right, I look internally hey, what could I have done differently? How could I have written that workout differently? Could I have read the room a little differently when they walk in? I don't always plan recovery days, but when we need them, we absolutely use them. And I said this to my swimmers a couple of weeks ago. I said, you guys are a real honest, hardworking group. I said, I trust you 100%. I said, I know you guys trust me 100% too. If you've been working really, really, really hard, some of these swimmers, Mark, my sophomores, haven't swum in a year and a half. They haven't swum in a year and a half, and they're going lifetime best times after 3 months. And it's and they do that in prelims, and then they drop more in finals. I'm oh man, this is great, just affirmation to what we're doing. But I say to them, you give me an honest effort every day, and I see you coming in, shoulders slumped, you're tired, you're not talking much, the mood's down, when usually the mood's way up at practice. I'm going to let you recover, because I know that you've been working harder than you've ever been working, and recovery is really important to adaptation and the success of your training. So it's really nice to be able to have a wonderful group that I trust, that I can read and go, okay, we've worked really hard for the last 7 workouts. They've hit the wall. It's going to be diminishing returns if I want to do quality with them today. So let's do a recovery workout, talk a little bit, make sure everybody's good with school, make sure that everybody's good with life, and then definitely let them know we're going to hit it really hard tomorrow, and so, and they know that. I talked to them too. Hey, swimming's really hard. It's really hard. You don't get in shape in 3 weeks and go best times in 4 weeks. It is the hardest sport because it's the only sport where you're suspended in a liquid and you're forced to hold your breath. And I like to throw this one out there too, like, hey, you guys could make it through like a football practice or basketball practice or baseball or softball practice or whatever. A lot of those athletes couldn't finish our warm-up just because it's that kind of sport. And that's just honest and true. So I let them know, there's you get a lot of hype for football in our country. And I don't necessarily come home on Saturday afternoons and watch college swimming, Mark. I'm a Georgia grad. I'm putting on my Georgia Bulldogs and watching some Georgia football if I get 5 minutes to do it. Because this job truly is 7 days a week and I love it. But like you talk about football being tough and all these other sports, swimming's got it in spades. We are by far the toughest sport there is out there. And I remind my swimmers of that so they know when it gets really hard, hey, you're doing something exceptional. You're doing something really special. Keep it up and it's going to pay off. And have it pay off so big at the Youngstown State meet this weekend. I told my swimmers, and I might have said this less than 5 times in my 30-year coaching career. I said, I looked them all in the eyes with a big smile on my face at the end of the meet. And I said, you guys exceeded my expectations. Nice job. And they got a big smile. Yeah. And then I drove the van home because I'm the bus driver too with the smaller team right now. We're working on changing that. It'd be nice to not have to drive home late on a Saturday night and have a paid coach bus do that for you. That's one of the motivations of growing the team too. But I'm happy to do it. You do whatever it takes to make things like this work. And like I said, the support at UPJ is unprecedented for me. It's just fantastic. Like the soccer coach, Eric, my buddy, wants to know how the swim team's doing. Like Shane, the women's wrestling coach, hey, how's swimming going? And then all those teams come into the pool and I get to play a part in cross training them, which is cool. One of my favorite things about coaching in college, when you coach club, you're around a lot of awesome swim coaches, and that's so valuable. But you get to college and you get to kind of, talk to the wrestling coaches about, okay, what do you do? I was talking to our compliance director, Mike Whaler, who is just awesome. He was the head coach of wrestling at Mercyhurst for 18 years. And now he's our compliance director. And I was sitting down working on some Teamworks and C+R. That's our platform we do recruiting and compliance through. And once you figure it out, it's a great platform. Mike's helped me a ton with that. And I said, Mike, let's talk about rest and prepping for a big meet in wrestling and swimming. I said, how do you do it? And I won't bore you with the details, but I just sat back and listened, and everything he said was so similar to how I do it. I said, that's great. All that does is give you confidence as a swim coach to see that wrestling actually has a taper too, and I'm a big believer in taper's all about how you train. Taper's what you put into it. There's no magic taper out there that can save you if you didn't do the work. You know what I mean? Taper's all about the work you put in. But it was great to have like a 10-minute conversation with, former wrestling coach and our compliance guy about how he preps his wrestlers for their end of season meet, and to have it match up with like a lot of the same science that we use in swimming and the same philosophies. That's just cool. And you just don't get that unless you're, in a college situation. So that's fun. And it's fun working with like the wrestlers when they come in, because I'm a big believer in, if you're not a good swimmer, I swim. I do my best to swim every day. I don't quite do it every day, but I like to stay in shape because I feel like it's what you do, not just to be a good example for my swimmers, but to live a long, healthy life, and I'm I can kind of glide through the water. I'm not fast, but swimming's not hard for me. And that's just a gift from God, straight up. And you see some of these like wrestlers come in and they're not good swimmers and they're like turning purple. And I'm jealous because they're getting a way better workout than I do in the pool because it's so hard for them. You know what I mean? So it's fun, man. It's just a really cool environment to be in, to be surrounded by all those other sports and everybody who's doing their best to be successful. And when it all works together, like I said, that synergy is just like, just look out. UPJ athletics is on the way up with every sport. And so it's our mission. So it's really cool. It's nice to have swimming as a part of that. It's a blessing for me to be a part of that. Like, dream come true to get this job, Mark. Total dream come true.
This is just part of the full interview with Coach Kyle Zeller. The uncut 53-minute version is available on the Heavy or Not Substack. and in the wafsu.org course on bygone seminars. Subscribe there to hear the entire conversation.